Welcome to the Organic Wine Podcast. Hello, this is Adam Huss coming to you from Los Angeles. Thanks for listening. This episode is sponsored by Centralis Wine, as usual, and that's my winery. Centralis is a Los Angeles-based, ecologically focused winery dedicated to connecting you to local farming that improves the environment through wine. There's a lot that goes into that, from supporting viticulture that is regenerative, to using lightweight bottles and minimal packaging, to incorporating fruit that's native to our part of the world and grows without the need of added water or chemicals. You can buy our wines, join our email list, and learn more at centraliswine.com. That's CENTRALAS wine.com. CENTRALAS wine.com. Quinn Hobbs, the founder and owner of Hollow Wines, is my guest for this episode. Quinn is based here in the Los Angeles area, but makes wine in the Central Coast. And I don't think it's inaccurate to call Quinn a maverick. He wants to build Hollow Wines to be the Gallo of sustainable, environmentally positive wine and shake up the wine industry. He's going big and thinking big. Quinn takes a holistic perspective on what it means to farm responsibly. He wants to make it more acceptable to buy wine in cans to reduce wine's carbon footprint, and he's followed the lead of his own health to embrace natural, minimal intervention winemaking. In addition to being a disruptor of the wine world with big plans, he's a father, he's studying for a PhD, and he's never more than a short drive from the ocean so that he can get some surfing in with all his free time. That's a joke. Quinn has no free time, but he does love to surf. Enjoy! Quinn, thanks for joining. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, man.
I really appreciate you doing this. And I just want to start. I just want to confirm. I want you to confirm something for me. So last year was your first year. Is that right? First year with
my first
Hollow
year.
Wine?
I double harvested. I started in January and I guess it would have been early February and went through March in Perth, Australia, Perth Hills.
Okay.
And I was a cellar rat there, learning how to make wine. And then my first vintage on my own was like 7 months later in August.
and that's so you were making wine in Lompoc, right?
Last year I did. This year I made it in Gilroy.
Right. No, I'm talking last year. I'm just establishing for your first out of the gate vintage, you were making wine like 2.5 hours from where you live. You crushed 27 tons in a facility that has like a half-ton crusher, like a half-ton press.
Yeah.
And you had a child under the age of 3 at the time, I believe.
Yeah, she's 2 and almost she'll be 3 in January.
And you were working on your PhD already at that point?
Yeah, still working on it.
Still working on it. I just wanted to establish for everybody listening that I'm speaking with a madman, and that they should not try this at home.
No, definitely not.
How was that? I mean, like, were you exhausted how, like, just emotionally and physically, how did that go for you doing that?
Yeah. I mean, when you're crushing...
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's all good, man. When you're crushing that much fruit, I mean, it's always tiring, but at the same time too, it's very rewarding. But I think one thing that people don't, for me, my whole life, I've been kind of pressured, like doctor, lawyer, CEO, right? That's always the joke. Cause like growing up in Palo Alto, it's like, you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, CEO. But the problem is those 3 jobs, exception of doctor, I guess, you're just not really physically and mentally stimulated. Whereas winemaking is like always all, mentally and physically stimulating at all times.
God, that's one of the things I love about it. Yep.
Sorry, what?
That's one of the things I love about it as well.
Yeah.
The physical aspect.
As much as like, as much as I don't like, getting stung by wasp multiple times, getting random infections because of, all the stuff that's like, all the wounds and all these things. The reality is I freaking wouldn't do another job in the world. So,
yeah. No, that's great. Well, why Hollow Wines? Why that name, Hollow Wines?
It's kind of a double. It's supposed to be a double. It was originally supposed to be a triple entendre, but it's only a double entendre. So, I was trying to find something that correlated to both wine and surfing. A barrel is a great wave. A wine
Yep.
barrel is where you store wine.
Yep.
So I was just like, oh, cool. A hollow wave is a freaking awesome thing. And I looked, and there's, I think there's a couple different like hollows. There's a toad hollow, a smoky hollow, or I don't know, a
Yeah.
couple different hollows of wines, but no, just hollow wines. And I was like, I like it. Short, simple, sweet. Um,
Yeah.
and then our tasting room was supposed to be in smoky hollow El Segundo, but that fell through with everything that happened. Um,
Got it.
so it was supposed to be a triple entendre. We reverted
Nice.
back to the double entendre.
I love the term hollow. I mean, in the East Coast, you see it a lot because you have these sort of wooded, gorges that are called hollows that are, lovely little nooks in the geography that are full of life and secrets and, ghosts and mysteries and things like that. And I love that term because it's so evocative of those kind of things. But it can also, it's one of those terms that can go either way. So I'm just curious where you came from. But let me ask you another question. How long has it been since you just last got out of the ocean?
Minutes.
So
yeah, I did my work this morning. I wake up early every day. Even when I'm not crush pad, I can't help it. Like I was actually impressed. I overslept and I woke up at 7 today. So like even on a day off, 7 is like outrageous for me to wake up that late.
Wow.
But cranked through some work, and then I was like, all right, time to go surf, and then come back and do this and get back to work.
So this year is different than last year. You've almost doubled your production, but you're in a new space it sounds like a much better facility. You want to talk about where you are and where you're getting your grapes from?
For my needs, for sure. I mean, look, I don't like to badmouth any facility. Like my old facility, it was great for garage. I call it garages plus. Like they're doing good stuff for people looking to scale from their garage side project kind of thing.
Right.
But a half ton press is not going to cut it for someone doing 27 plus tons. Our new facility, granted, it's like I said, it's even though we have massive destemmers, we have 2 presses, one that does 2 tons whole cluster, the other one does about 4 tons whole cluster. So we've been crushing 6 tons whole cluster at a time.
Nice. Yeah.
But the reality is, between all the I think there's 10 wineries and 5 winemakers there. A couple are doing I think one winery does like 4 labels because it's a custom crush / co-op there.
Nice.
So I think the whole I don't know what the total number is, the whole facility, but I mean, between me and Wonderwork, the other cool guys, we did 80. But there were days where we got 60, 70 tons in a day. So,
Wow.
we'd be on the crush pad trying to help process. It's cool because it's a cool community there, like very helpful people. We had a work trade punch down schedule with me and a couple other guys. So we'd swap punch downs, and I was very far behind as of like a weekend and a half ago. And I was like, I guarantee you I'll catch back up. And they're like, no, we don't have that much fruit coming in. And I'm like, you guys are delusional. And in one weekend, I think I had to do I think 60 punch downs for them. And they're like, oh man, I guess, yeah, you did catch up.
Nice.
And then the other thing is they forgot they had like fruit coming in and all these things. So I was sitting there doing all these things by myself when I'm sitting there trying to get out of the winery, like just trying to be done. So they've got all.
That's amazing. Why did you do this? I mean, this was not your first, industry that you got involved in terms of a career. Why'd you switch to wine?
I still ask myself that question every day, and I wonder because you don't do it to get rich. That's definitely not one thing that's ever. Don't plan on getting rich making wine.
Yep, I can second that.
The other thing is you don't plan on having free time or chilling, hanging. That's not really that either.
Yeah.
But the reality is my PhD is actually in leadership and change. And one thing that I was, kind of as I watch, a lot of people put a lot of pressure on, individuals to make changes for making the environment a better place. And I was like, look, this is not always the case it's not always easy for people who don't have the financial means to make decisions that are more environmentally friendly, right? Like when we got our new car, we got an electric car because we had the ability to afford that, right? But that's not available to everybody.
That's right.
So, I looked in the wine space and I was like, man, there's really not anybody in wine, with the exception of guys like you and me, but no one's really kind of done it on the scale that, you know, that, like Constellation or Gallo or these big, massive guys are doing.
Right.
And
Right.
so, I really wanted to show that, hey, this is, you can be a sustainable and ethical winery and be at scale and, create products that people enjoy. And so that's my long-term goal. So that's why I do it. I don't know if my mission's come through yet, if it's succeeded.
Well, no, I mean, you're second vintage. It's like, I mean, there's so many ways that you have to find your way in the first, few years. And I mean, the only example that I can think of that comes to mind is somebody like Bonterra, who has, affordable under $20, the Fetzer Group brand there, for that you can find in a grocery store. But that's essentially what you're trying to do with some variety. I mean, they pretty much have the standard things, but you're doing a lot of much more interesting wines, I would say, than that.
Yeah,
Is
and the
that
other thing
fair?
too that's different is they like for Bonterra, it's right. It's like it's Fetzer's group. They're like, oh, cool, we're gonna have this little side project where we do good wines. It's like,
Right.
well, why isn't Fetzer doing the whole thing that way? Like, why
Yeah.
can't they just be their whole business ethical, right? Like,
Right.
and sustainable. It's like that's why I get frustrated. Is like, look, I actually have I got my PhD in that, and I have actually like a credit away. I got to take one more class for my MBA program, and I have my Pepperdine is a really cool program called it's the SEER program, and it started by the co-founder of Patagonia, and it's basically all about being sustainable and environmentally friendly
Yeah.
business practices.
Th-
So it's like it's pretty simple. It's
Yeah.
like this should be a big thing. It should be everybody, not just Patagonia
Yeah.
and Bonterra. Or we've got one line that's doing it right. No, it doesn't take much for everybody to do it right. You know.
It really doesn't, especially in California when it comes to grapes. I mean, the climate is perfect. I
Yeah,
mean, the pressures are much lower than, say, like New York, where there's a wine industry.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
And even then, like, even with those guys, like, there's so much, it's like, look, it's tough because, there's this big pressure to be organic 100% of the time. And to me, to like throw away grapes that you've already put in so much energy and effort and farming and labor and stuff like that, like to let those go to waste because you didn't use a spray that might be, as long as it's not harmful to the environment, if it's a
yeah.
non-organic spray but it doesn't harm the environment in any way, then what's the problem with using that? It's like
Yeah,
it's
it just right. I mean, it just takes a lot of knowledge, and then you have the communication issue with the consumer, everything like that, which is a whole other side of the problem. But yeah, I agree. I mean, the way I've started to think about it, and the term that I've started to use much more is like an ecological perspective on making the world better through wine, or at least doing no harm, because great, you could be organic, but you could be, creating a massive carbon footprint, or you could be organic, but you're wasting a ton of grapes, like you were talking about. Whereas you could actually lower your footprint by maybe using one little spray, or something like that, and it protects this huge investment of time and labor and resources, and carbon investment into a vineyard, and then you can make grape from it, but you could not get certified as organic, but you might be doing a better thing for the planet that way.
Yeah. And no,
But
you're spot on, man. It's really trippy how like people get really hung up on like making sure they're doing all these right sprays and stuff like that. And like there's forms of organic farming that are like actually probably more detrimental to the environment because of how much they're tilling the soil. They're running tractors all the time,
right.
and that's just pushing so much carbon into the atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, you
it's
and
tough, man.
yeah.
It's like mental gymnastics all the time, and I sit there and I just beat myself up because like I make a decision here or I make a decision there, and I think that it's the right decision, but it's not. I'm like, was that really the right decision? I don't know, and it's really emotionally stressful for, I think, people like me and you who
Yeah.
constantly just trying to do things better.
Yeah, it is because I mean you're pulled in so many directions. On the one hand, consumers don't have the time or desire to even read ingredients for the most part at this point in history. And you're supposed to communicate like all of this thought and all this effort and all this emotional stress that you're talking about that went into the decisions behind the product that you're trying to sell to that consumer. And they're like, cool. Like it's like the amount of mental energy that they're willing to give to the thing that they, to and I mean that's really one of the things that I want to underline repeatedly with and why I do this podcast is just to remind consumers of the power that we have, with our daily choices and how thoughtful or thoughtless we are with them in terms of what we consume and how those things were created and crafted and where they came from. And if you're putting the burden on a producer to come up with a like a bumper sticker explanation for their process, like all the decisions that you're talking about, you're doing them a disservice. I mean, it takes work on both sides. Like if we producers are going to sweat over it, consumers should be thoughtful about it as well. I mean, there is a burden if we want, I mean, unless we don't care, unless we want to just burn this world down, then fine, let's burn it down thoughtlessly, and then reap that. But otherwise, I do think there is a lot of responsibility on both sides, and not just on the producer's side to try to like shoehorn all of this thought and energy into a simple explanation, a little bumper sticker slogan on a like sustainable, even one word, organic. It's not that easy. Any thoughts about how we communicate that, or how we do better at communicating that?
Oh man, and it's tough because I know that the consumers want to be, thinking about those things, and they are thinking about those things.
Yeah.
But I don't always want the onus to be on the consumer.
No, I don't either. Yeah. No,
I
like
I think
you
it
said.
should
Yeah.
be, yeah. I think people like us should be getting like active tax credits and well, I mean, like even like bonuses, like in grants and stuff like that. Like there should be more money being made available to people like us trying to make the right decisions. And I'd say the one place where consumers should start to be more flexible and start thinking is not scoff at a $20 can of wine,
Yeah.
because that is the direction I am heading with everything that's going on with glass.
The weight of
First
it.
it was,
Yeah.
the carbon footprint of it is insane, right?
Yeah.
And, I get it. It's a beautiful vessel, and a can is not a sexy way to open a glass of wine. But what people don't realize is like the difference between, people look at a can like, why should I pay $20 for a can? I'm like, well, would you pay 40 for a bottle? And they're like, yeah, of course I pay 40 for a bottle. It's like, well, that's 20 for a can. It's half a bottle. It's exactly half a bottle.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the math issue here? It's, you're paying for the juice, right? If you believe that this wine is better, feel comfortable paying 20 for a can.
Yeah.
But that's the hard part that I think it's going to take consumers a long time to get to that point. And I think that's the one place where I really want to see consumers start to change their attitude and their opinion. Because again, like, I'm not even blaming consumers. It's also on me. I need to start thinking that way, but
Yeah.
I've started doing that. I was part of, when Tyler at Field Record and started his canned wine club. I was like one of the first guys to sign up. I was like, this is a rad idea. I'm all on board. And I was a member there, but I actually heard that he's scaling that down, which, I heard he might even shut it down. I don't know if that's just hearsay, but,
Oh, that's a bummer. Yeah. I mean, that contradicts what I was just going to say, which is, it seems like the current trends of natural wine and things like that have given rise to and permission to and more acceptance of these kind of alternative packages, as well as alternative wines that might be, better for the carbon footprint of wine in general, and just expose, open up the world of wine to some new stuff. But maybe that's not true. I mean, we can talk a little bit about that if you'd like.
I mean, I think people are okay with it if they're out, I think there's still the price point issue, right? I think people still think I I think people maybe not be apprehensive to maybe a $12 can, but I think a $20 can would still throw people off.
Right. Like they don't
You
think of
know,
it as fine wine if it's in a
I think
can.
yeah, and I think that they're still gonna think like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to pay 10 over 6 for a can. I even wonder if 12 is too high. But the reality is like my rosé is 24 a bottle. I can't really get much cheaper than that.
Right.
And I mean, all the cogs that go into winemaking. I
Yeah.
don't, making a $24 bottle of wine is like, people think I'm getting rich off that. I am not getting rich off that at all.
Right. I mean,
um,
it's important to say like how many people really are involved in that process. Like how many people are fed, how many families and you know everything make make their lives off of that $24. I mean, there's so many people in that chain.
yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
I sell wholesale. I rarely sell
yeah,
through myself.
right. Yeah, and that means,
So,
cut that in half at least or more.
yeah, about half. Yeah.
Um,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
that's true. Now, you I don't know if out of the gate you got attention as a natural wine person or if you started in that position by your own choosing. But it sounds like you've kind of been through a little bit of a uh, I don't know, an evolution in your thinking about natural wine. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I actually, it's funny because I think if you talked to me 5 years ago, I would have scoffed at natural wine. And I was like very kind of in the realm of big, bad, Bordeaux's and Paso Reds and Napa. Wasn't ever really a Napa guy. I just always thought you were paying for status and stuff there. I
Yeah.
just kind of saw through it. But I love Paso and I love some of this big stuff coming out of San Ynez Valley. And then I actually had a bit of a health crisis, 2019, and had to stop drinking for a while. And I was quite overweight. I was close to 300 pounds. I'm about 210 now, 205 now. Bounce back and forth depending upon what time of harvest we're in.
Wow.
So I lost, almost. I was actually 285, so I lost about 80 pounds.
Yeah, I would never
And my
have guessed
daughter had
that.
just been bored. Yeah, and I was like, I need to make some lifestyle changes. And in that process, I go to drink these, and I finally when I started being able to drink again because I was having real big problems with my liver and my kidneys and my spleen and all these things. And I was trying to figure out, I was like, man, I really want to drink wine, but I would just feel immediately sick and my liver, like I would just feel my spleen and liver hurt. And so I basically was kind of like stumbling around and discovered the fact that like natural wines actually didn't bother me. And I was like, they didn't necessarily, I mean, like you drink too much of anything. People always get like, oh, natural wines, you don't get hangovers. Like, no, you can definitely get hungover.
Yeah.
I've been there. We've all been there. But there was other things, and I still don't know what I can associate them to. I'm still trying to figure out what it is. I know actually I have actually kind of wines that are overly oaked. I'm sneezing all day the next day, and I'm pretty allergic to oak, as a tree pollen. So I'm just kind of maybe like, I think I've always been allergic to oak wines.
That's
Heavily oaked
interesting.
wines.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and actually, the funny thing is when I finally had my first new barrel, I bought a bunch of new barrels last year, thinking that that's the thing you had to do.
Right.
And I was taking barrel samples from them, and I immediately just start feeling my throat kind of get tickly and itchy and scratchy.
Wild.
And like, man,
that is wild.
Yeah, I was like, I'm definitely allergic to oak. So, I'm actually trying to phase oak out 100%. I think in the next 2 years, I'll be 100% in concrete, amphora, stainless, and polyethylene.
Right on.
So,
Huh.
yeah, I'm a big flex tank guy. I just love flex tanks.
It's funny. You're not the first person that said that to me recently. Like I know somebody who was just like, I am so over oak. I'm so over barrels. Like the cleaning, the weight. It's like flex tanks is the way to go. And
they're amazing. The wine that comes out of them, it's just scary, right? Because people are just super anti-plastic.
right.
But these are not like just shitty plastic tanks. These are like they're very expensive. They're $1,500 each. Like they're not cheap.
Yeah, they're meant to be micro oxygenating like a barrel. Like
Exactly.
they breathe very slowly at like a controlled
BPA free.
Yeah.
Yeah. they don't have any of the toxic chemicals that are found in, that are associated to cancer and, in plastics. They do micro-ox, exactly. There's two different levels. They have different levels of micro-oxing. And I find that actually malolactic fermentations go through smoother with less trouble. And I do all natural mallows. I don't do anything.
Nothing inoculated. Yeah.
Nothing inoculated. I mean, I might inoculate another wine with another wine.
Right.
Like,
that's
like
a
if
good
something
idea.
gets stuck. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, I mean, I think this year I did that with one wine, where I just took, I was like, well, this one is going on day 9 without having dropped a brick. And this one I brought in yesterday and is down 5. So the native yeast on this one are very healthy.
Right.
So let's just take a half a cup here, dump it in this,
Yeah.
And it was crazy is I dumped it into a 700-gallon vessel.
Like a half a cup, literally? Like
4 ounces is all it took. 4 ounces in a pump over, and that thing was raging.
Wow.
So it was just a matter of they just were asleep. They just needed to be woken up. So, there's no way that just 4 ounces of yeast was the do all. It was just that the other yeast were they just probably passed out from being in a stainless tank, and the temperature, our weather's been so weird that the temp probably just dropped. So that,
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. Like, what is this? I haven't really, we got all of our grapes this year from below Santa Barbara. So what's the weather been like in the Central Coast?
Well, that's the crazy thing is I don't think people realize how dynamic, the Central Coast as an AVA is.
Yeah.
I think it's
yeah.
For one, it's massive.
Right.
People don't realize Central Coast is basically, I think it includes the AVA above Ojai. I think it goes as far as Ojai.
Yeah, probably.
All the way up to
the Bay, right?
Contra Costa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Contra Costa is actually part of Central Coast AVA.
Wow.
Yep.
God.
So you're looking at
Santa Cruz is in there, right? Is Santa Cruz then part of it?
You know what's really funny? I think Santa Cruz AVA, and I was reading yesterday, and I might be in trouble for doing this, but I didn't know this, but for some reason they've excluded themselves from the Central Coast AVA.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened.
Well, yeah, makes sense. I mean,
Santa Cruz is like, as Central Coast is like I can think of. That's like, to me, that's where I grew up surfing, and we always considered ourselves Central Coast. But
yeah, but
it's it's a massive AVA. So
yeah.
You have and I buy fruit as far north as we bought fruit from Tehama County, which is up near Redding, Red Bluff.
Oh wow!
So that's why I bought it. Yeah, I bought fruit from a vineyard in Red Bluff. Really cool regenerative property out there.
What kind of grapes?
Regenerative organic, doing really cool stuff. Again, I can't say that he's like the most he's raising cattle, so that's not the best thing, but he's at least using cattle to help. He's using their fertilizers and stuff like that to dump back into the vineyard and so forth to do natural fertilizers. And then he's got a nursery, so he's growing all kinds of crazy varietals up there.
Well, they say it's not the cow, it's the how. Like it's it depends on how you're raising cattle. It can be actually really beneficial to the world. In fact,
it could be. Yeah, and he's small scale. It's not like he's great. Doing the I-5
right
stockyards with 60,000 cattle.
Right.
No, he's got maybe a half. And actually the funny thing is last year I had a relationship with a cattle rancher in Lompoc where I was sitting there trying to figure out where to dump my grape skins, and all the wineries are like, we have too much, you can't take it, and the dump was like, no, we don't want them anymore, we won't take them anymore, you guys have dropped off too much. And so I was like, well, where am I going to put grape skins? Like, I have 25 tons of grape skins I got to get rid of. And luckily I was able to find a cattle rancher he's like, yeah, just dry them out and then feed them to my cows so there's no alcohol in them.
Right.
And dude, the cows would see my van, they'd see me pulling up my van, and they'd just come charging because it's like candy to these guys.
Pigs like it with the alcohol still in it. If you find a pig farm,
yeah,
you don't have to worry about drying it out.
Yeah, pigs, you can give it to them with the alcohol in it. The cows don't have.
You can kill them with the alcohol.
You can kill. Yeah. So apparently one year, the rancher is like, just make sure you dry it out, because apparently one year he is also a winemaker. His brother, who's also a winemaker, all three of us didn't dry them out all the way, and all of it got eaten by one cow.
Oh.
And so that cow, the cow survived, but was not a happy cow. Just say that. He was happy, and then he became very sad cow.
Super happy, then super sad. It sounds like my roller
Yeah.
coaster if I overindulge.
Yeah.
Well, you're getting grapes from San Benito County as well.
That's majority of my fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like my super favorite, like AVA. Well, I get from 3 different vineyards.
Are they all Stiletto owned?
No,
Okay.
no. So I mean, I get from that's like, well, if you count that Stiletto has 3 vineyards, I get it from like, well, Stiletto has a ton of vineyards.
Yeah, like 5.
I get them from like, yeah. So I think it's from all the different Stiletto vineyards. So I think that's like 4 or 5. But I get it from his I love his Piscinus, from his Piscinus vineyard down there at the end of Cienega Road. I get my Cab Franc.
Okay.
And then I get Chardonnay from Cienega from the DeRose vineyard, which I've strong armed him into doing dry farm. He's always been dry farm, but he's now doing full organic, which is amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and where him and I are looking into these like new tractors with the laser tech for spraying. So basically, he's going to be able to remove like all spraying as well and be carbon neutral because he's all solar. They don't use like any air conditioning. They just pump in the cold air at night. That guy's doing all kinds of cool stuff for the environment. All organic, nitrogen that he gets from grape stems and seeds and tills them back in and so forth.
Just compost.
Just composting like crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, and so that get Chardonnay there, and then from and then from on the other side in Tres Pinos, a bunch of fruit over there. And Tres Pinos is a trip, man, because it's just all these places are there's 2 fault lines. So Cienega Road, it basically follows the famous what's the
San
famous
Andreas.
fault line? San Andreas. Yeah. Yep. And then Tres Pinos follows the Calaveras fault line, which is not as well known, but also another major fault line.
Right.
And so you just get these like incredible soil structures and just these crevasses and alleys going through the vineyards that just create these massive temperature swings. Like you'd be standing on one part of, Stiletto's vineyard and it's like 85, 90, verging on 95. And then basically like down the hill, across the creek, not even a quarter mile away, it's like 75.
Yeah.
20-degree temperature difference.
That's a lot like Montebello, Ridge's vineyard. It's on San Andreas, on that fault line and the uprising there, and you've got those crazy temperature differentials. Like if you're up there and it might be really hot, and you drop down the hill and it drops 20 degrees. Yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, I'm throwing that out there to, there's a definite probably price difference from being in Santa Cruz versus where you are in terms of per ton cost, but you might be getting the same kind of quality. You might be getting some similar terroir in the soil.
I mean,
in geology.
For me, for what I'm getting out of these places, I don't think it's any. I mean, I'm just astounded by how amazing the wines are this year, and just the acid levels are amazing. I very little VA pickup on any of my wines. Everything is just so clean and crisp and fresh. And I'm sitting there and, I've always kind of scoffed at the idea of being a 0-0 winemaker. I just think I just thought, I was like, my 2 vintages, I was like, oh, I just don't think it's possible because there's too many things going on.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there looking at my wines and I'm looking at them and I'm like, I don't need to add sulfur. Like I'm looking at the molecular SO2 charts.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't need to. These like acids are like 3.1, 3.2.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Freaking like there's like 0 VA, like less than 0.2. And I'm just like, what am I doing? What do I need to add sulfur for when these wines are coming out so clean?
Yeah. Yeah.
My Pinot, we brought in 26 bricks, which, it actually wasn't supposed to even bring in Pinot, but
like
a
late harvest
custom crush situation. Yeah, it was a custom crush situation where they're like, the guy's like, okay, this guy needs you to make Pinot for him. And so I was like, okay, fine. So it's not even really going to go into my lineup.
Right.
but it ended up being, I got, he brought it at 26 and a half bricks and the pH was, 3.3.
Wow. That's insane.
And I was like, this is textbook, man. This is freaking textbook wine. Like, how do you
Wait,
make, like
26 bricks
how
though?
do you get 26 bricks? And the phenolics are just
Yeah,
outrageous,
that's like
man. Like,
15
this,
plus percent alcohol with a pH
yeah,
super
man.
low. That's insane.
I have last year I picked from Eden Rift, and this wasn't intentional at all, from their Terraces vineyard, right on top of a limestone vein. We picked at close to 30 bricks, finished at 16.67 alcohol and 3.7 pH post mallow, all native, nothing. And people are like, oh, native yeast can't produce 16%
Yeah.
alcohol. And I was like, I don't think cultured yeast can produce 16% alcohol. Like, I don't think, like, I think native yeast are way stronger nowadays.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not after those type of wines anymore. Those were never, you get these high alcohol ones. I'm shooting for like 10 and a half, 12% max.
Yeah, well,
But you never know, man. Sometimes things just don't line
well,
up.
that would
to
explain your
start.
really low pHs, 3.1, 3.2. I mean, those are some
Yeah,
like, pretty searing acidity like perceptions, right? I mean,
I love it.
okay.
That's what
All
I'm
right.
after.
All right. Um,
Um,
all right. When do you add sulfur if you do?
we had at bottling, and the only thing I did SO2 is actually our piquette.
Okay.
But if you don't SO, I don't know if you've made
Oh
piquette
yeah.
before, but if you don't,
It's too low alcohol. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's not enough
I've
alcohol
had
in
a whole
it.
batch of
You
Piquette
have to
turned to
use it.
sherry like overnight, basically, because I didn't add. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's not a question of should you. It's a question of when, like how soon should
Right.
you.
Right. So you don't add any at
Um,
crush then. You just crush and let.
no, yeah, we don't crush. I was thinking about it too because I've heard so many people doing it, adding a crush, and then it'll blow off and all these things. And I did with a little bit of our Pinot last year as a test. And I just was like, man, everything is so clean. We have like, just these immaculate clusters. There's no rot of any sort. There's no black molds, nothing. So I'm like, yeah, I think it's time to just let nature do its
Yeah.
work.
And you don't have a problem with
Um,
VA during that time generally?
no, man, nothing took off, man. It's just just like I said,
Just
man, it's
nice
just a
and
clean
clean.
year.
Wow. What do
Yeah.
you look for?
We
Okay.
do a lot of ferments and flex tank. Like I did a lot of carbonic wine this year, and we did those all in flex tanks. And those flex tanks are so easy to
Right.
clean. Little bit of water to clean them. And that's what I really like about them.
Low water usage.
And
Yeah.
just low water usage. And that's something I can track and keep an eye
Yeah.
on. And so that's really kind of, and being a surfer, like I'm like, this is what I'm going to make my mission is just figuring out how to reduce my water consumption because it's something that, carbon footprint is hard to measure when you're in a co-op,
Right.
but water usage I can pay attention to.
Yeah.
I can really be on top of, like, all right, grab one bucket. We're going to use one bucket to clean this. And so that's just kind of my go-to is just being really on top of
Yeah, they
that.
often say like 7 bottles of water for every bottle of wine or something like that is and maybe even more than that, 10 bottles of water for a bottle of
Oh
wine.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's astounding. Yeah, it's like I think it's 10 gallons or something like that for every 1 gallon of
Yeah,
wine.
that sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting time. What are you caring about? Like what's motivating you in terms of your decision making around these things?
I mean, dude, it's just yeah, if I had one reason for why I think about the environment, it's like I feel like that would be a selfish reason.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it should just be on everybody's mind, right? I think if everybody was thinking, about doing better, just doing one thing better a day, then we'd have a massive increase in just positivity and in the world becoming a safer, cleaner, healthier place.
Yeah.
Um, and like not everybody can reduce their carbon footprint, but you can uh, turn your lights off. Every time you walk out of a room, you can wait to run your dishwasher until that thing is jam packed. You can, walk to get your cup of coffee in the morning as opposed to driving 3 blocks. It's like if everybody did something like that once a day, I think there'd be a massive impact. And that's why I always think of from a corporate perspective. You sit here and you learn about how like all these trucks and sea containers flying all over, or boating all over the world are producing more sulfur in the air than all the cars. 20 ships produce more sulfur in the air than all the cars in the world combined. It's like, it's outstanding to think that, right? You're like, what the hell, really? Like, it's only 20 ships to like a billion cars. How does that make sense? But that's the thing. It's like, yeah, these big corporations just get away with bloody murder.
Yeah.
And so that's why I always think of it from that perspective. So that's my motivation is, okay, how do I show that my business can be successful and, hopefully become successful at some point.
Yeah.
But, that we can be, you can do things the right way, make great wine and not be, blasting the planet at the same
Yeah.
time.
Well, I do think packaging, the way that you've been thinking about packaging, is really important. I mean, you think about, have you ever done a beach cleanup day? Or
Yeah. I mean, I do it by myself. I need to do it with the
yeah.
team. Get a Hollow Wines Day, dude. But I do it all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of have a self rule. It's like when I go surfing, I try to pick up, it's more, always leave more than you
Yeah.
came with. It's the whole rule.
Yeah. I've done a
So,
couple with those with Heal the Bay and things like that.
Hill the Bay
Yeah.
is great.
And they're,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're there and you just see what people consume. Like when you're cleaning up, it's like the same stuff over and over again. It's all these little bottle caps and the seals and things like that. It's these little tiny pieces of plastic that people just toss away on the day, throughout their day because they're eating or drinking something that has this little packaging plastic thing that seals it. And it's true, what you were saying. I mean, it made me think. I was thinking the same thoughts. It's like, how much easier would it be for Coke to just change their packaging so that those things didn't exist than it would be to ask, the 500 billion people that drink Coke to stop throwing their stuff in the, like to make sure that they put that in the right container and that it gets into a trash can. You know what I mean? It's like all Coke has to do is just change their packaging, and then those consumers don't even have a choice of not throwing that stuff away. They just don't have. Yeah.
So simple.
Yep.
It's sadly simple, and it's just people don't think about that stuff. They're not. This. It's tough because it should be automatic, but it's not.
Well,
So.
why don't you talk about some of the wines that you're making this year? I know that they have some great, interesting varieties at Stiletto, and maybe I don't, maybe there's other stuff that you're doing that I don't know about. I mean, you already mentioned Chardonnay, but what else are you doing?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm doing. I think the coolest thing that's exciting that gets people geeked out is I I'm making a lot of hybrids with fruits. So I'm working with a couple berry farmers in
Okay.
Watsonville who basically have these berries that they basically, as they're packing containers, if a berry has any amount of juice on it, they can't put it into a container to sell.
Yeah.
So literally, these berries are thrown
Wow.
away, but they can be fermented and turned into wine and not affect the
Right.
consumer. It's like it's a totally normal berry. They're organic. They're not. Some of them are organic. Some of them aren't organic. Um, but
But they're like
the
reclaimed from the
non-organic ones
dumpster.
are even they're just going to the dumpster, and the non-organic ones are not sprayed. For me, like one thing, not everybody's certified organic. I wish everybody could be certified organic, but look, the reality is, look, it's not it's not possible to be for everybody to be that way, especially in Watsonville where it's super moisture.
Yeah.
But for me, there's some like big no red flags on sprays. So it's like no Roundup, none of that crap. Nothing that's going back into the water system and damaging, the water table.
How are you
Um,
monitoring and confirming practices, farming practices?
I mean, look, you have to have trust with these farmers, right? But at the same time, too, it's not hard to go
It's
snooping.
not. Yeah.
So I just snoop around. I just snoop around, man. I mean, it's like I was really ashamed because one guy, to think there are people who there I know there are very famous farmers who people believe to be organic. And dude, I walked into that place and I'm astounded at the shit that I saw lined up on the walls. And look, there's no reason that if you don't spray those things, why have them? Right?
Yeah. If they have
So it's
them, they're
like, to
spraying
me, I
them.
don't trust. So I immediately
Yeah.
lost
Of
trust.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should.
So it's just like, no, I was like, sorry, man, I won't be buying fruit from you. And the guy was like, what? But I'm the best fruit guy in this town. And I'm blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, just not going to work. It's just not going to work for me as much as I want it to be.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yep. Have you
So,
looked into
yeah.
pesticide use reports for growers?
I have for some, but
Okay.
not for all. Um, yeah, I need to do a better job at like, I mean, I have like, I buy for so few growers now. I have really like a really
Yeah.
tight relationship with them. And I know like, look, these guys aren't going to screw
Yeah.
me
And
over.
Saletto's now
I don't
certified,
believe it.
right?
I think he'll be some, it's kind of like trickling down. Like, I think, certain, I
Oh,
think, I'm not
they
sure
have
which
it on their
ones.
website, which suggests to me that they are.
Yeah, not all of his properties are
Okay.
fully certified yet,
I
but some
gotcha.
of them are.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. But even then, I'm not going to take the time to go get certified, man. I don't, it's too costly and such for me. I don't think it adds any value. It adds value, I think, from a farming perspective, for me buying from a farmer, but for me selling to my consumers, um, yeah. So like, that's the thing there.
Oh yeah, you're right. They only have like certified sustainable. Um, yeah. What is the why is that not the case with the consumers?
I don't know, man. Like I hear different things. Like I've talked to distributors, and they're just like, I don't care if it's certified or not. I'm like, okay,
Huh.
and I think sometimes it actually cheapens the wine for some reason. Because you think about it, like only huge corporations are fully certified organic wine producers, right? Are you certified or
I
no?
mean, so we get grapes from certified vineyards, but like as a winery, you have to be able to say like your wine is organic. Like you have to certify your winery and the vineyards, and we're in a
Right,
shared facility just like you, and so it's not like you'd have to get everybody there, including the landlord,
on board.
to be on board with it. Which
Yeah,
if I had my own place, I probably wouldn't certify the winery because. It, well, I don't know. It depends. Maybe I would. I don't know how. I maybe I would because I do kind of want to say like the truth is our wine is made with organic grapes. Like most of the time, or biodynamic, or a vineyard that we have verified. In various ways. The same things that we've been talking about, like trusting, verifying with your eyes, looking up pesticide use reports, doing all the due diligence that's possible. And then you just, the rest is faith, which it is, even if you have certification. Um, and yeah, so I think it's, we can list like ingredients, organic grapes, but we can't say made with organic grapes simply because the winery also isn't certified. And I think it would be nice to be able to say
right.
made with organic grapes on the label potentially. Um, but maybe not. I don't know. It might, it all depends on where we go. Like, I think we're small enough that I think, the people that are buying from us get to know us in a way. Like my dream originally was to be sort of like you and, sort of expand and become that, like, uh, like Bonterra, but where the whole business is Bonterra instead of it just being a branch of the business, but like basically organic wine for the people kind of thing, under $20, that those kind of things. But I don't know. We've just kind of revised what we're planning. I don't think we're going to get that big, and trying to take a more craft approach and micro actually go the other direction, do like micro production of really sort of unavailable in any other way wines.
I think it's a more insane way, man. I think I've dug too deep into my current path of insanity, but I would say that you're probably a saner way of doing it.
Well, I don't know. It's yeah. I mean,
Um,
definitely, it's driven by necessity in a lot of ways, not necessarily like strategy. So we'll see how it plays out. But no, it is.
yeah,
It's like yeah, in a way, it's just suits my personality in a lot of ways too. Because I'm not like you. You clearly have tons of energy to burn, and I also got to say, some nice things about you. Very generous. You've been great with just in the short time that we've known each other, just being super generous with your information and connections and time. All wonderful things, all great qualities. So I appreciate you. Do you want to talk about?
thank you.
So you're making some co-ferments. We started talking a little bit about that. Do
Oh yeah.
you want to talk about any more of your wines, or any specifics, or what where
Oh
people can find you if they want to
yeah, yeah. I mean,
check you out?
yeah. If you're in LA, I mean, the easiest place to buy, I think, my wine is probably like if you're in Culver City, Hilo. If you're in California, or I think anywhere in the United States, really, Primal Wine is really rad. They're online, and then you can buy a couple different producers at the same time. Um, and they have free shipping. I don't always have free shipping. Sometimes I have free shipping.
Nice.
um, and actually, though, you know what though, and I was just having another bottle yesterday, glass yesterday. I've sold out. But Lou's Wine Shop in Silver Lake, Primal Wine, has my Hang 11 Chardonnay, which I only made 2 barrels of last year. And there's probably like just bottles left lying around, kind of
Right.
situation. And that wine is just one of those wines where I didn't make enough white wine I didn't make enough orange wine last year. And just, I'm like down to like cases of my Greco Tufo, and I'm down to, like just what I planned on keeping, actually less than what I planned on saving for myself, kind of as a library to like one day release. I overshot on my Hang 11
Yeah.
Chardonnay. And it's just so fun, crisp, clean. And actually it's funny because I got into a kind of a argument with the distributor who said I wasn't natural enough because I arrested mallow. And I was like, what? What do you even know how to make wine? And I was sitting there talking to this distributor, and I was blown away. And I was just like, wow, this person doesn't have a clue how wine works. I was like, look, sometimes natural mallow takes over. Sometimes natural mallow never occurs. Sometimes, like in my Greco Tufo, it never happened. I was going to sit there and wait in barrel for 30 years before I say, you know what, it's time to bottle it. The pH is so high or so low. I'm going to hit it with 30 parts per million sulfur, call it a day. That thing's never going through mallow. Maybe in 20 years and bottle will go into mallow, but at 301 pH, there's no way it's going to go through. My Hang 11, 3.2 pH, it went from 1.2 total grams malic down to zero point 0.7. Tested it a month later, tested it again, 0.7. Month later, 0.7. Month later, 0.7. I was like, all right, that's it. That's all it wants to do. So hit it with 30 parts per million sulfur, which is tiny. Put it in bottle, taste it. I have a bottle the other day that was rolling around the back of my van for weeks, getting beat up in the sun. Put it in the fridge, chilled it, took a sip. Mal still hadn't took it off. So I was like, but she's saying I arrested it. And I was like, what do you mean I arrested it? It stopped. Like this, you can't tell nature what to do. So many people who are on the other side of natural wines, and that's kind of one of my beefs. Is there such a great misunderstanding for what natural wine is? So it gets, winemakers like me get really kind of frustrated because, I do everything by Vin Natur's books, with the exception of we have one wine that we machine pick, and that's it. And it's a labor thing. Like it's not always safe to pick some of these vineyards, like people don't think about it. It's crazy, man. There's rattlesnakes, there's all kinds of crap in vineyards, man. Picking is dangerous.
It's true.
So there's the obsession with, and like, look, I'm not a big fan of machine pickers. I prefer hand pick because it's a lot less work for me, believe it or not, because you're not sorting through crazy stuff like, all kinds of canes. I mean, like I pulled like whole canes out of machine pick bins. You're like, what the hell? So I'm not a fan of it, but sometimes it's better. But in Australia, I got to work with some fruit that was picked by an optical picker.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
I've seen them in action too. Actually, it was funny. I was driving down the 101 coming down, and they had an optical picker going through that property right there off the 101 right before you get to Los Alamos. And it just looks like a freaking spacecraft just running through a vineyard, just like blue lights shining. And just, but it's just so crazy. You get these bins full of grapes, and you just run your hands through them, and it's just perfect grapes, like no green grapes.
Oh, wow.
Small berries, no big berries. Just
does it pick a whole cluster grapes and then sort of single berry sort? Or?
No, what it does is it brings it in, it shakes all the berries off the vine.
Okay.
So it's just a very violent process. Right. I'm surprised vineyard people don't mind their vineyards being just like abused by it.
Yeah, I can't believe that.
But then once it drops in, there's like basically it goes onto a kind of like a sorting table in the machine, and it blasts the berries and the mog out using an air. Using an air blade. So
got it. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I've seen optical sorters.
So it's cool. It's crazy, but the quality of the fruit that comes off of them is fantastic.
Well, yeah. Well, consistent, right? It's got
consistent.
Yeah, I've heard that as a complaint where it's like you don't get the full spectrum of flavors. You get that more like a homogeneous thing because you can only dial it into a specific slot of ripeness or whatever. Versus when when you're doing a whole cluster, you get the whole range of everything. that's in the vineyard. So you get that
Yeah.
sort of diversity of ripenesses and flavor developments and things like that, which all add to the overall. Um, maybe adds a dimension, maybe doesn't. Who knows? I mean, it might be a philosophical choice at that point. So Hollow Wines is
Yeah.
hollowwines.com is your website.
Yep.
But anything you want to leave us with in terms of getting in touch? Can they find
Oh
anything?
man.
Can people get any grapes? I mean grapes. Get any wine of your wines through hollowwines.com?
Yeah. Hall of Wines. Yeah, we have. Let's see what I've released. I think. I got on my website here. I gotta see what's going on. It was actually down last week. Stupid. Um, let's see. We got the summer 2020 release. Yes, awesome. So we have my Cab Franc, which is like kind of becoming my flagship wine. It's like my second favorite wine I make, second or third. I don't know. I always have a new favorite every day. Um, it's just phenomenal characteristics. This is Piscinus AVA. It's like Loire Cab Franc from California. I mean, how do you get better than
Right
that,
on.
right? Just tons of tannin and character and rich, great acidity. So that's on there. That's the Backdoor Dreams, which is a surf term. People always think of it, their mind goes south and goes into the gutter and they start thinking dirty things. Going backdoor on a barrel is when you go through the backside of a tube of a wave. And it's just like the ultimate feeling in surfing. So for me, it's kind of like my penultimate wine. It's like my penultimate wave. So that's why I named it that. And actually just got great press by the great Laura Ness wine writer, super awesome lady. She loves my wine. She actually just connected me with the person who hosts the Cab Franc festival and wants me to submit it for the contest. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm a contest guy, but
Yeah.
we'll see what
Why
happens.
not? Yeah.
Um, and then my Chardonnay is on there, the little brother or little sister, I should say, to the Orange Hang 11. And this was direct pressed into concrete and then fermented in concrete for 21 days, then racked into stainless steel. And almost no mallow went through. For some reason, the skin contact went through mallow. The non-skin contact didn't go through. So just nice and crisp and, good acidity. And then we have my big Pinot and my little Pinot. So I did a whole cluster Pinot with that same Pinot that I was telling you came in that really hot vineyard with just
Yeah.
really high alcohol low acidity. So last year that one came in at 15.6. So I think it'll be
Wow.
about the same. It'll be like 15.6. And then the lower block, which is cooler, didn't do whole cluster. We did just regular, and that's like a nice 3.4, 3.5 pH, just really clean Pinot,
That
13.6
sounds lovely.
alcohol. So yeah, I mean those are fun, and also just like the crowd pleaser favorite, my Goon of Fortune wine, which is half. It's got actually all 5 big Bordeaux's, but it's predominantly Malbec and Petite
Wow.
Verdot. Um, yeah,
That sounds
killer
fun.
wine,
Yeah. Love that.
funky, rich, good VA,
Good
good
VA? Okay.
VA, good balance. Yeah, there's sometimes good VA. There's sometimes VA. PT Verdot, I don't know if you worked with it before. I don't think I'd work with it again after last year, but that thing just wants to make
Interesting.
VA.
Okay.
And everybody I've talked to that's worked with Petit Verdot is just like, you can't hide from VA on
Okay.
Petit Verdot. You can try,
I
but it's
might
just
have
going to
worked with
come.
that this year, actually,
But
not unknowingly.
yeah,
I work. Yeah,
oh,
Petit
Petit
Verdot.
Verdot
Well,
or
Petit
the
Verdot.
VA
I
that just,
worked with a grape that the it was like a new owner of a vineyard saying it was Cabernet, and like 5 out of 5 winemakers are like, this is not Cabernet, and it definitely had a VA tendency. Smells nothing like Cabernet, tastes nothing like Cabernet. So I'm like, well, maybe based on what you said, it's PV. Could be. Oh yeah.
is it purple too? Yeah, it's definitely, it sounds like
Okay.
sounds like Petit Verdot because Cab is
Yeah.
more blue. A
Oh,
lot of people don't
interesting.
realize Cab Franc are blue grapes.
Or
Merlot, Petit
purple, a
Verdot
little more red in them.
are
Okay.
purple. Yeah,
Yeah, it definitely has that vibe.
yeah,
Okay. Good to know.
yeah,
Mystery solved.
yeah. It sounds like Petit Verdot. And if it's just, yeah, I think it is, man. It sounds like it. Yeah, I mean, dude, the VA. I mean,
Yeah.
you just can't stop it, man. It just doesn't, it doesn't want to stop. Just like everything you do, like, or just like keeping it cold, keeping it warm. It's like, and last year was a tricky year. Everything came off so
Yeah.
late um, that by the time we were making wine in Lompoc, it was like 50, like literally we were moving things into the cold storage because it was the warmest place in the winery.
Right.
Like,
That is
how
nuts.
crazy is that? Like my freaking Chardonnay, people were like, "Did you cold crash this?" And I'm like, "Nope." Nope, it naturally cold crashed
Wow.
itself. It's just so cold. It was like 45
Wow.
degrees.
Yeah. Nuts. Cool. Well, Quinn, thanks so much for this. Great talking to you.
Awesome, man. Yeah, great talking to you, man. Sorry for just ranting. I'm sure I went.
It's all good. I appreciate it.